Elon Musk is back once again, wanting you to believe that, oh, he's this expert of fraud and abuse. He's gonna weed it all out. And also, he understands in a way that us Luddites, I guess, wouldn't understand the tech aspect of how this fraud actually happens. Now, in basically every instance in which he's tried to point out what he sees as fraud, for instance, in Social Security, he's been proven comically inept and just does not understand how any of these systems actually work. Well, we have another example of that today, and it involves unemployment, an area of the government where there is actually fraud. And we'll describe the real fraud to you. He's gonna describe first the fictional fraud. So he said this, he quote retweeted a Doge post. And he says, your tax dollars are going to pay fraudulent unemployment claims for fake people born in the future. This is so crazy that I had to read it several times before it sank in. Maybe he read it multiple times. I doubt it. I think it's more likely that he posted that initial tweet, but I don't think anything sank in because it is actually crazy and it's not actually true. So the post that he's responding to says that there are nearly 25,000 people over 115 years old who claimed $59 million in benefits since 2020. Okay, there's also 28,000 people between 1 and 5 years old that claimed $254 million in benefits. I don't really understand what the issue would that be. I guarantee that all of those 28,000 people between 1 and 5 are in fact unemployed. But anyway, then there's also nearly 10,000 people with birth dates over 15 years in the future that claimed 69 million. In one case, someone with a birthday in 2154 claimed $41,000. And that's so crazy, I had to read it multiple times until it sank in. And then I'm not an idiot and I realized that it's just data entry problems. That's literally all it is. They put in the wrong numbers. That's literally all it is. And even if it wasn't, let's say that Elon Musk wasn't purposefully lying as he always does about this stuff. Add up all those numbers. What is that? $370 million over 5 years. Now that's not nothing, but is that the most important thing going on in the government? That he thinks he's found maybe $300+ million in fraud over 5 years? One of the most turbulent periods of unemployment in our history. And that's what he's found, when it's almost certainly just data entry problems. It's probably not fraud at all, or the vast majority of it isn't. And so again, even in an area where there is actually fraud, what he chooses to focus on is the fake stuff, the ridiculous, comical, clownish stuff. Now, I did say that there's real fraud, and I do want to acknowledge that. So the Government Accountability Office, they have done a look into unemployment. That's one of the things that they oversee. And they found over a similar sort of period during the pandemic, they found fraudulent claims of about 11 to 15% of total benefits paid. That's between 100 and 135 billion dollars. Now that is actually a significant amount of money. Now, understand again, it was crazy times and all that. And a lot of the fraud is that people are claiming it across multiple states where part of what they'd be getting is actually real and part of it is fraud. But there's a couple issues with it. First of all, he is talking about comical, clownish cases that are a tiny, minuscule fraction of the real fraud. But much more importantly, that fraud we already know about. The GAO already does oversight on that. They're already trying to crack down on that. And so he isn't content with the government to police itself as it's been doing. He needs to pretend that Doggy is justified, that he's finding new fraud, even though they've already got the real fraud. You've just got the comical stuff that shows you don't understand how keyboards and spreadsheets work. And so again, like if you actually you look at breakdowns of the schemes and methods that people use to commit fraud in these areas, it's not the stuff that he's talking about, the fake birthdays and everything. And so this is yet another area where he is just too incompetent, too ignorant to be in charge of an area like this. He is wasting our time. He's wasting massive amounts of money when responsible people with actual expertise are already cracking down on the fraud. Now, with that said, I want to turn to another instance of actual fraud. And hey, what do you know? It actually has to do with Elon Musk in this case. Elon Musk is spending pretty much every waking moment of his claiming that the American people and their government are full of waste, fraud, and abuse. And while he's doing that, the government is, as always, being manipulated to benefit himself, at the very least abusing the system, if not outright fraud. And so here we're talking about a bill that House Republicans have passed. They're gonna benefit quite a few billionaires, but perhaps nobody more so than Elon Musk himself. And so there was efforts to make sure that the government monitors digital payment applications in the same way that they do banks and other financial instruments and organizations. So what they're talking about there is Venmo and Zelle need the same sort of oversight to stop fraud and scams and abuse that banks do. But the Republicans don't want that because the people in charge of those apps don't want that, okay? And so what do you know? Billionaires are getting what they want. House lawmakers passed by a party line vote, SJ Resolution 28, a move that followed the Senate's vote last month to rescind the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau rule requiring that oversight of these digital payment apps. So the government was actually doing something responsible in this case with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, but as with everything else having to do with the CFPB, they're destroying it because they don't want cops on the beat. They want CEOs. They want rich tech billionaires like Elon Musk to be able to get away with murder. And Musk has been very particularly opposed to that rule, which is now being killed. And so Demand Progress is a progressive advocacy group. They put together a timeline of how this worked. So starting in November of last year, that was when we had the rule being finalized that the agency should proactively supervise these digital payment apps. Just 1 week later, he tweeted, "Delete CFPB." And hey, he's getting what he wants, it's being deleted. In January of this year, the CEO of Twitter announced that Twitter Money will debut with a partnership with Visa. Oh, what do you know? Elon Musk's business is getting into the area that he was trying to stop rules being made in. So then in February of that year, Doge enters the CFPB and kicks off an effort to utterly shut it down, which is proceeding. On March 5th, the Senate voted to revoke that digital payments rule. And hey, now just yesterday, the House of Representatives actually revokes it. So they're gonna do the responsible thing. Elon Musk is against it. He gets in for his own personal financial benefit, and they've killed the thing. And who is gonna actually suffer from this? Regular people who are now going to be subject and victims of far more extensive scams and fraud than they otherwise would be. And significant amounts, by the way. In 2023 alone, consumers reported losing $210 million to scams on peer-to-peer payment apps. That's a 62% increase from 2021. So it is not only big, it's rapidly increasing. And users who accidentally send a payment to the wrong person can find it nearly impossible to get their money back. And that's the way the CEOs want it to be. They don't want to be responsible for that. They don't want to have to assure that these payments aren't fraudulent. They don't want to have to go through the process of getting that money back. That's complicated, that's costly. So you kill the rule, you stop it from actually happening. And thanks, by the way, to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, their supervision in the past, they were actually successful in getting $120 million refunded to customers who had been scammed through Cash App alone. But not anymore. Not on Cash App, not on Zelle, not on Venmo, not on X Money or whatever it is. So people are going to be fleeced. And by the way, the people who sign up for the X Money, what sort of people are gonna be using that? A wide representative, broad sample of America? No, it's gonna be people who like Elon Musk. He doesn't want those people to be protected from scams. They're gonna lose everything because they trusted the wrong guy.